Weed and feed products promise a simple solution to two lawn problems at once. Killing unwanted weeds while feeding the grass the nutrients. It needs to grow thick and green. It sounds like the perfect shortcut for busy homeowners who want a beautiful lawn without spending every weekend on separate treatments. However, according to lawn care experts and horticulturists, weed and feed is one of the most misused products in home landscaping. Many homeowners apply it at the wrong time, in the wrong amount, or under the wrong conditions. And instead of getting a healthier lawn, they end up with patchy grass, dead ornamental plants, or wasted money. Below are 5 of the most common mistakes people make when using weed and feed, along with explanations of why each one matters and how it can be avoided. Mistake 1. Applying it at the wrong time of year. One of the biggest misunderstandings about weed and feed is timing. Many people assume that because the bag says weed and feed, it can be applied whenever the lawn looks like it needs help. In reality, the herbicide and fertilizer components each have their own ideal application windows, and those windows don't always overlap. Pre-emergent weed and feed products are designed to stop weed seeds from germinating, which means they must be applied before weeds actually sprout. For most regions, this means early spring, when soil temperatures are just beginning to warm, typically before they consistently reach around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. If the product is applied too late, after weeds have already emerged, a pre-emergent formula will do almost nothing to control them. On the other hand, post-emergent weed and feed products are meant to be applied when weeds are actively growing, so applying these too early before weeds appear wastes the herbicide entirely since it needs actively growing leaf tissue to absorb the chemical. Fertilizer timing is just as important. Applying nitrogen-heavy fertilizer during a summer dormancy period, especially with cool season grasses like fescue or bluegrass, can stress the lawn rather than help it. Feeding grass when it's dormant does not help it grow. Instead, the unused nitrogen can leach into the soil, run off into storm drains, or simply be wasted. Experts generally recommend feeding cool season grasses in early spring and fall, and warm season grasses like Bermuda or zoysia in late spring through summer, matching the fertilizer application to the grass's natural growth cycle, rather than a generic calendar date. Mistake 2. Ignoring local climate and grass type. A related but distinct mistake is treating weed and feed as a one-size-fits-all product regardless of geography or grass species. Lawns in the northern United States behave completely differently from lawns in the deep south, and a product schedule that works perfectly in Minnesota can be a disaster in Florida. Cool season grasses, common in northern climates, thrive in spring and fall and go semi-dormant in the peak heat of summer. Warm season grasses, common in the south, do the opposite. They grow most vigorously in the heat of summer and go dormant in winter. Applying a standard weed and feed product on a warm season lawn following a cool season schedule means fertilizing while the grass is dormant and doing little more than feeding weeds and promoting fungal problems in the thatch layer. Soil type also matters. Sandy soils drain quickly and may need different application rates than dense clay soils, which hold both moisture and chemicals longer. Homeowners who skip a soil test or ignore their region's extension service recommendations often end up using a product formulated for a completely different climate zone, leading to poor weed control, fertilizer burn, or nutrient runoff. Local cooperative extension offices, widely available across the U.S., often publish free regional guides that specify exact application windows based on local climate data, and consulting these resources before buying a bag of weed and feed can prevent a lot of wasted effort. Mistake 3. Using it on the wrong type of lawn or nearby plants. Weed and feed herbicides are typically broadleaf selective, meaning they are formulated to kill dicot weeds like dandelions and clover while sparing monocot turfgrass. This selectivity is a strength when used correctly, but it becomes a serious liability when the product drifts onto or is absorbed by nearby plants that aren't turfgrass. Trees, shrubs, flower beds, and vegetable gardens are all vulnerable to the herbicides found in typical weed and feed formulas, particularly products containing 2,4-D or dicamba. Tree roots often extend far beyond the drip line of the canopy, sometimes into the area where a homeowner is applying weed and feed to the lawn. If the root zone absorbs the herbicide, Trees can show symptoms of damage such as leaf curling, yellowing, or even die back weeks or months later, long after the connection to the lawn treatment might be forgotten. Similarly, granular weed and feed, accidentally spread into flower beds or vegetable gardens, can kill or severely stunt broadleaf ornamentals and food crops. New lawns and recently seeded or sodded areas are especially vulnerable. Grass seedlings have not developed the root systems needed to tolerate herbicide exposure, and applying weed and feed to a new lawn can kill the very grass the homeowner is trying to establish. Most product labels recommend waiting until a new lawn has been mowed at least 3 to 4 times before applying any weed and feed product, giving the turf enough time to mature and develop tolerance. Mistake 4. Applying without considering weather conditions. Weather plays a critical and frequently overlooked role in how effective and how safe a weed and feed application will be. Applying granular weed and feed to a dry lawn, for instance, without watering it in afterward, can leave the herbicide sitting on grass blades rather than reaching the soil or the weed's root systems, reducing its effectiveness and increasing the risk of the granules blowing away or being tracked indoors. Rain timing is another major factor. If rain falls too soon after application, the herbicide and fertilizer can wash away before they've had a chance to be absorbed, essentially nullifying the treatment and potentially causing nutrient runoff into local waterways, a growing environmental concern flagged by agricultural agencies. Conversely, applying weed and feed right before a drought or during a heat wave increases the risk of fertilizer burn, since the concentrated nitrogen sits on stressed grass blades without enough moisture to dilute and absorb it properly. Wind is an underappreciated risk as well. Granular products are less prone to drift than liquid sprays, but on a windy day, dust and fine particles can still travel into neighboring gardens, ponds, or vegetable patches, causing unintended damage. Most manufacturers recommend applying weed and feed on a calm day, ideally when rain isn't expected for at least 24 to 48 hours, but when the lawn will still receive irrigation or light rainfall within a day or two after application to help activate the granules and move them into the soil. Mistake 5. Over-applying or skipping the label instructions. Perhaps the most common and most damaging mistake is simply applying too much product, either because a homeowner assumes more is better or because they didn't calibrate their spreader correctly. Weed and feed products are formulated with specific ratios of herbicide to fertilizer, and exceeding the recommended rate does not create a stronger effect. Instead, it often causes fertilizer burn, visible as yellow or brown streaking across the lawn, and can increase the risk of herbicide damage to the turf grass itself, not just the weeds. Spreader calibration is a frequently skipped step. Broadcast and drop spreaders vary by brand and model, and the settings printed on a bag of weed and feed are only a starting guideline. Homeowners who don't calibrate their spreader to their specific equipment often apply product unevenly, leading to some areas being heavily overtreated while others receive barely any coverage at all. This unevenness explains why some lawns end up with a striped or patchy appearance after treatment, alternating between chemical burn and areas where weeds were barely affected. Reading and following the label is not optional guidance. It is often a legal requirement. Since these products are federally regulated, labels specify not just application rates, but also re-entry intervals, pet and children safety precautions, and restrictions near water sources. Skipping this information can lead to accidental harm to pets who walk on treated grass too soon or to contamination of nearby ponds, streams, or storm drains, since many municipalities have restrictions on nitrogen and phosphorus runoff due to their role in water pollution and algal blooms. Getting it right, a smarter approach to weed and feed. Avoiding these 5 mistakes doesn't require abandoning weed and feed products altogether. It simply requires a more thoughtful approach. Lawn care specialists generally suggest a few best practices. Test the soil before starting a fertilization program. Identify the specific grass type and its ideal growing season. Choose a pre-emergent or post-emergent formula based on actual weed pressure rather than convenience. And always follow label directions exactly as written, including calibration of any spreading equipment. Many professional landscapers also recommend separating weed control and fertilization into two distinct steps, rather than relying on a combined product at all. This approach allows for more precise timing, since weed control often needs to happen at a different point in the season than fertilization for the healthiest results. While it requires two applications instead of one, many experts argue it produces better outcomes and reduces the risk of the common mistakes outlined above. Ultimately, a healthy, weed-free lawn is less about finding a single miracle product and more about understanding the biology of the grass being grown, respecting the surrounding landscape, and paying attention to the specific conditions of soil, weather, and timing. When weed and feed is used with this level of care, it can be a genuinely effective tool. When it's used carelessly, however, it often does more harm than good, turning a well-intentioned effort at lawn improvement into a costly and frustrating outcome.